Hey everybody, welcome to my very messy studio. Like a lot of you, I am shut in here for the interim, not completely in prison, but by decision, I am deciding to hunker in place as much as possible. And since we're all kind of out of contact with each other, I thought at the very least I could do is bring you into my studio here and show you how I record one of my Hour of the Wolf reviews. If this works out, maybe I'll do it more. I was planning to live stream this, but for some reason Facebook wouldn't allow me to do that, and so instead I'm recording this. If it works out well and it looks okay, I'll probably put it up on the Hour of the Wolf page after the review runs, and maybe I'll put it up some other places as well. So, funny story, I actually have already recorded this once, but it turned out that I hadn't turned my audio recorder on, and even if I hadn't put in a memory card into the recorder. So, I'm doing it again. It's fun. I don't mind, actually. I got lots of time now, as we all do. Okay, so come on over here. This is the recording rig. A couple of things, or a few things, actually, before we start. One is that the 360-degree camera I'm using has a 15-minute limit, so it's probably going to cut out before I finish the reading here. But we'll work with what we've got, won't we? The other thing is when you hear the review on Hour of the Wolf, that's an edited down version of my recording. And so what you're going to hear is me flubbing a lot. I've gotten it a lot better over the years, but honestly, I'm still not great. The third thing is that these glasses here are my backup glasses. My actual glasses, which have progressive reading lenses, are out getting a new prescription put into them. And so I'm going to be taking these off and reading without lenses. And it worked okay the previous time I did it a few minutes ago, so it should be okay here. The one more thing is that when I start the recorder, I'm just going to be sitting here for a few seconds quiet so that I can get some room tone. I then use that room tone to put into a noise removal filter on my editing program and just sort of tamp down the noise. So that's it. Let me get these off. Let's get started, shall we? And let's make sure we're actually recording. We are recording. Okay, here we go. Excuse me. Here we go with the noise, with the silence. Just wait a few seconds. Okay. Hour of the Wolf movie review, air date March 19th, 2020. Dr. Sleep. Take one. Greetings, fellow shut-ins. I'm Dan Persons, and this is my Hour of the Wolf review. I haven't been shy about covering on-demand releases here anyway, but for the duration, that is where our focus is going to be, has to be actually. Plus side is we can all hunker down and enjoy these things together, and at least I've got a good one to start. So, continuing our conversation from last week, you might remember me highlighting a scene in Harley Quinn, Birds of Prey, in which Ewan McGregor's bad guy humiliates a woman by forcing her to dance on a table, and how I felt that scene was rendered so unpleasantly, calculatedly so I thought, that it threw the entire film off kilter. Well, here we go again. Well, here we go again. In Dr. Sleep, the sequel to Stephen King's and Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, and available on demand. There's a moment about 1/3 of the way through when the film's main antagonist, Rose the Hat, played by Rebecca Ferguson, and her crew of, I guess you could call them shine vampires, shine being the psychic power that, in this film, turns out to be quite more versatile than was previously demonstrated. Anyway, Rose and her crew feast on the powers of a young boy by torturing him to death. And while the scene isn't especially graphic, it's also quite unsparing in depicting the suffering the child endures, to the point where it is truly uncomfortable to watch. But unlike Birds of Prey, there turns out to be a good reason for the discomfort, beyond just scoring some political points. To give director Mike Flanagan his due, he took on a daunting task, helming a sequel to a Kubrick film, and one of his best at that, and making it not just a decent follow-up, but one of the better horror films of 2019. One of the better horror films of 2019, using a prologue that replicates events from The Shining and the immediate aftermath to directly quote Kubrick. Who the hell is Kubrick? One of the better horror films of 2019. Using a prologue that replicates events from The Shining and the immediate aftermath to directly quote Kubrick, Flanagan then pretty much forges his own style through the main story, which is set in present day and finds a grown-up Dan Torrance, played by Ewan McGregor. There's a pattern here. He gives a much better performance than he did in Birds of Prey, at least. Coming to the aid of a teenager, Abra Stone, played by Kylie Curran, who has her own ability to shine and is being stalked by Rose and her crew. There are echoes of Kubrick in certain symmetric compositions and through some evocative camera moves, but Flanagan puts his own stamp on the film, using a tilting camera to depict psychic powers being unleashed, working action sequences into the scares, and tellingly flipping the script in one profound way. Not long after we've watched Rose and her crew sadistically kill that boy, the vampire stages a psychic assault on Abra. But it turns out the teen has laid a trap for Rose, and the overconfident vampire discovers to her terror that she is at the mercy of someone far more powerful. This is unusual. Typical in a Stephen King tale and in horror in general, the protagonists are at the mercy of whatever evil assails them through most of the runtime. Typically, they rally in one way or another by the final act, and good prevails in the end. But you see, that's at the end, with the heroes finding their power almost in the end. But you see, that's at the end, with the heroes finding their power almost as a last resort. Putting the antagonist at bay this early in the story is an uncommon twist, and a welcome one that not coincidentally justifies the unsparing depiction of the boy's murder. The sadism Rose exhibits is at least met in proportion with her own anguish, and it gives an added dimension to the character. We see not only Rose's evil, but her vulnerability. At the same time, it grants our protagonists more agency through the bulk of the film than just being able to wring hands and cower in a corner. Admittedly, there's a part of me that's questioning my embrace of how Dr. Sleep deploys its story. It definitely draws a contrast between how Kubrick told his tale, all atmosphere and frail humanity at the mercy of malign forces, and modern mainstream filmmaking, action-packed and peopled by empowered, in the dramatic sense, protagonists. Action-packed and peopled by empowered, in the dramatic sense, protagonists. In the dramatic sense, protagonists. But I don't think my concern is that I'm falling victim to contemporary filmmaking's tendency to cater to shortening attention spans. The film is close to 2.5 hours after all. Parenthetically, we don't get to the Overlook Hotel until the last half hour, and the motivation for that is pretty strained, although it ultimately plays out satisfactorily. It's just that it's a different time, and despite, or maybe because of the nods to Kubrick throughout, it's a different way of telling a story. Not necessarily worse, though. Dr. Sleep manages to be enough of its own movie, ultimately. As a sequel, and as its own story, it's a damn good one. And as long as you're sheltering in place, why not check out my YouTube series, Historama 3D? We're busy at work on our next episode, the anti-porn diatribe, Perversion for Profit. A film that in its zeal manages to become the very thing it's protesting against. That should be up soon. Meanwhile, we've got Gamera 3D, the Goodman Cut, the Cold War Nightmare, Duck and Cover, and much more for you to discover. And by much more, I mean 2 other titles. You can watch in VR through YouTube. You can watch in VR through the YouTube VR app or on regular YouTube using anaglyph glasses, and you can do both by searching Historama 3D. Can you think of a better way to wait out the coronavirus? Well, yeah, probably, but this is fun too. Please check it out. For Hour of the Wolf, I'm Dan Persons. And there you go. I don't know if the camera is still running, but if it is, that's how it goes. And I did actually record it this time. Yay me. Okay. That's it. Hope you enjoyed that. As I said, if this works out, maybe we'll do it again. Take it easy. And I'm going to go over here. And I'm going to shut off the camera.